Hello, and welcome to the Bardic INNspiration.
Okay, which muck decided that we should cover mud, slime, clop, gook, and goo? Ivan! Okay, in all seriousness, let's talk about ooze today.
Yeah, what's the ooze?
What is an ooze? Well, like you said, it's just a big old
giant pile of mucus.
giant
Acidic mucus.
They thrive in the dark. They kind of shun the light or extreme temperatures. They like the cold, dark abyss. It's where they thrive the best. They feed on anything they absorb, but prefer organic materials. Fungi, fungus, rats, simple, small stuff.
They're attracted to anything warm and made of all that fluffy, good meat.
Mm-hmm. So anything with rapid movement and warmth, especially if it has some intelligence, it can set up simple traps for them. But yeah, it's definitely a slow killer. It's
slowly digest you over however long it takes.
Mm-hmm.
A very painful and agonizing death if you are conscious for the whole of it.
Which, I mean, it's not like they have that much to do, so they're just kind of chilling, like you said, in the dark. So they have time. They can wait. They can eat slow. They enjoy their food. And with that, they're sleepless. They don't need to take naps or anything. They don't take breaks. They can just keep going and going. Granted, like we said, they move slow, but they got time.
Well, and that's especially dangerous for adventuring parties, because then you've got an ooze hot in your trail. Well, you're going to have to rest eventually, whereas the ooze, it doesn't. So you may outrun it at first, but oh no, the half-orc stops snoring. What's going on? And that's what this wakes everyone up, is this half-orc stops snoring. Well, it turns out there's a gray ooze on them.
Well, how fast are they?
They're typically slow, running mechanically running 20 to 30 at best.
Yep, the fastest is the black pudding at 20 feet.
Oh, okay.
Everything else is 10.
Ooze
15.
Master is a little faster, I believe, but that was...
So they could eventually catch up to a party that's just resting for the night. Although, I don't know why you would rest in the Underdark.
Now, this also works against the oozes because they have, most of them have a blind need to feed. They're easily led into traps or, pitfall. You lead it across a pitfall. Well, it's going to come straight for you, and then it's going to fall in the pitfall. And then those that can't climb out, well, now you're stuck at the bottom of a pit, which is a great trap for kobolds or the like.
It's a great way to make an ooze die.
Yeah.
Well, is that just the gelatinous cube, or is that all oozes? Because some of them can climb.
Some of them can
Black
climb.
pudding can most definitely escape.
And so can the orc jellies. But gray oozes, gelatinous cubes, they're a little more keen to just stay there. And
they're not as dexterous as other jellies.
Now, the other issue is, okay, now you have them in a trap. Well, you still have to feed them, because otherwise they're just going to wither away.
And die, yes.
And die. So they still do need to be eat. There is this theory that all oozes came from an entity known as Jubilex, or that they're spawn of Jubilex. And Jubilex being the ooze god or goddess, depending on your world. This entity is one of the very few that can control oozes or grant intelligence to said ooze.
It is mentioned that he is a demon lord known as the Faceless Lord due to that reason.
Yeah, I imagine an apocalypse happening at the time, and that 30-foot tidal wave coming, and it's just ooze, 30-foot tidal wave of ooze. So that's kind of what I imagine. It's just rolling wave of ooze coming at you. Featureless faces kind of squeezing out of the ooze as it falls and screams for you.
Yeah, just imagine that, a tsunami of ooze, of just jelly.
That sounds actually really good right now.
And every time it's some of it flings off, it just creates a new ooze and it starts going for you.
Just a giant tsunami that spawns black puddings and ochre jellies everywhere.
Let's kind of break into the more specifics, get more into the individualistic characters of each ooze. We'll start off with the black pudding.
They resemble bubbling, heaping piles of thick black goo, so tend to hide well in dark places. They're about 15 feet 15 feet across, 2 feet thick, and they weigh a lot. They weigh 18,000 pounds.
That's one hefty ball of jelly.
9 tons, right? If I'm doing my math right.
How much did it say it weigh?
18,000.
9 tons.
Yeah,
Yeah, 9 tons worth of weight.
That's a lot. That's a big truck, a Hummer, some tanks.
A
A few
few elephants.
elephants.
Yeah, they're pretty hefty, which kind of helps with them just being able to trap people inside of them. Like I said, they are usually just inky black. Some of them do end up kind of with some brown, gray, or white in them. But for the most part, if you see them underground, they just appear as just dark blobs that can just kind of sit there. And like we mentioned earlier, they can climb, which is pretty cool. They can move around and get wherever they need to go in the Underdark.
I always imagine like the cartoonish tar pits that you always see in dinosaur movies. That's what the black oozes are.
Like we said, like most oozes, they are mindless underground scavengers. They absorb literally anything that they find, so nothing is safe when a black pudding is around. And because they can climb, they can use that versatility to position themselves in shadows, and then they can just wait. So they can just climb into like a corner of a cave or like a small alcove and just sit there and wait for their prey to come to them. They attack by grabbing, grappling, and constricting creatures, and their acidic touch destroys most of all material. The only one it doesn't really is any type of stone. So, dwarven stonework will be your best friend against them. They also have a bit of annoying reproduction quality because they split whenever they are slashed or pierced. So, if you go into a fight with them and you bust out the swords, it's going to get really bad really fast.
Or your archer or ranged fighter. And you said they like to lay traps. It always made me think of narrow passage. It's commonly traversed. Say it was a goblin passage and the goblins learned better. Well, these adventurers don't know. Well, the black pudding does its usual. I'm going to sit on the ceiling until I sense that something's under me, and then just drop 18,000 pounds onto the first adventurer.
Just sort of droop down around them and trap them in.
You gotta wonder, all that weight coming down on one adventurer, how does the weight alone not crush them to death?
Yeah, I would definitely add in some fall damage for that. Maybe a strength save too. Something along those lines.
That's it. Try to avoid it.
If you knew it was there.
Yeah, that's true.
So let's delve into the gelatinous cube.
Yeah, let's get into one of the most common oozes probably known to man.
One of the
Most
most
iconic,
iconic.
yeah.
Most iconic.
Unlike the black pudding, the gelatinous cube is a cube. It takes form. It looks like a big ice cube just making its way down the
Well, you know
hallways.
why it looks like a cube, right? The reason why it looks like a cube is because when they grow rapidly and they grow to fit their environment. And most dungeons are square. Most of the hallways are square or tunneled squarely. And that's why they're cubed, is because they have a thickness between front to back, but they also have roof to floor.
Right.
See, I always thought it's like, wouldn't that make at least two sides not flat, it'd be rounded?
Well, yeah, in some dungeons where you've just got the half crest.
Ways.
No, I mean like if it were a squared hallway, and it wasn't constantly touching two sides, because it's not in a cubed room, specifically a cubed room. Two ends of it should be rounded out because it's trying to grow outwards.
I see what he's getting at.
Oh yeah, a little bit.
So the two ends of the hallway, it would just
So maybe a little bit when it moves. I
Yeah.
mean, these are really slow comparative to the black pudding.
Maybe a gelatinous cube with its one intelligence knows to keep itself.
it just knows to keep it cube the
No.
entire time.
Keep itself
That's
squared.
the only reason it has.
It's
one
squared away
intelligence.
all its priorities, okay?
Here's the thing, though. Can it shape into different things to get through a passageway, or
It, in
does
fact,
it have
cannot.
to? Okay.
It can split off, but it cannot reshape itself. Like it can't shrink down or fit through tiny passages like the other oozes can. But what it does is it splits off like an offspring, essentially down another path, whether it be a small crack or it be another hallway. The only issue is if it meets back up with that ooze, say the hallways connect again, it's gonna reconsume that said.
So it brings up
Cube.
my question for that. What's the limit of it splitting? Like, how many times can it split either by combat or by its own will? To
Well,
just
as
split,
long
like,
as
how
it's-
small can it get?
Oh, as how small?
Yeah, what's the limit?
I mean, I would leave that up to the GM. Typically, what happens is they split down hallways, and then they regrow with the consumption of
Right.
organic matter
Right.
back into to fill up the void.
That's their manner of reproducing.
Right, and just... I would-
Mechanically, an ooze always will take up, if you're using a grid of 5x5 space, they always take up one space no matter what.
Well, does it grow when it's fed? Like,
It does indeed. It grows much larger when fed.
okay.
So you keep pouring on the organic matter, it'll keep growing.
So the gelatinous cube at the bottom of a pitfall, as long as you feed it just enough, it's not going to grow out of the pitfall. Because if it grows out, then it'll split off an offspring.
It's going to grow from a gelatinous cube into a gelatinous rectangle.
But
Still a
then,
cube.
if you don't feed it, there's that issue that it withers away. Slowly becomes less gelatinous, it becomes more viscous, and then eventually just... I imagine it just dries up. I wonder what a dried gelatinous cube would look like.
Probably much smaller than it looks in real life.
I
I imagine that giant cube just shrinks down with all that moisture gone into like a cube the size of a die.
Mm-hmm.
1d6.
Now, gelatinous cubes, their go-to is because they're transparent. That's what kind of gives them away, but that's their
niche.
niche, yeah.
They render themselves basically
You never
invisible.
You
to
never
travelers.
really know, until you're in it.
Right, this caught me off guard.
So in our campaign, or specifically when I'm running the campaign, there was Toril, which is Andrew's character, who can often run into danger before seeing it. Well, the way I had the encounter set up was there was a gelatinous cube going down the hallway, but it had a skeleton from a previous thief, or treasure hunter, and the way I described it is I made it seem like with the little torchlight that he could have, the skeleton was just walking down the hallway. Well, he went to charge in and attack it, and turns out, oh, what did I just run into? It hurts, it hurts, it hurts.
I can't breathe, I can't
breathe,
breathe.
I can't breathe.
Why am I taking acid damage?
Yeah.
Soul torch Toril was carrying was snuffed out in an instant.
Yeah, and because Dragonborn don't have dark vision, he went blind and in a world of pain.
Yep.
Also, what happened with this was there in the gelatinous cube was a sphere that was housing a silence spell, and then there was also a glass flask holding a black ooze.
Black pudding.
Or sorry, a black pudding. So when the gelatinous cube was finally defeated and the silence spell broke, they were able to relight their torch. And as they relit the torch, they realized, oh crap, there's a pseudopod attacking us. And it turns out the black pudding broke out of its flask as it crashed to the ground because the ooze died, or the cube died, and then killed or attacked Toril.
Yeah.
Toril just wasn't having a good day.
I don't think Andrew has a good day.
Not with oozes particularly.
In fact, one could say that his whole week with Oozes was pretty terrible.
Yeah, that same week. What happened with your campaign, Nate?
Well, another of Andrew's characters, Sudriel Carcern, happened.
Yeah.
Here he was trying to free this princess being held in a den of phase spiders, which also happened to house a gelatinous cube. See, the gelatinous cube was kept around by these spiders to clean up after their little messes.
Yeah.
Sudriel decided it best to directly help the princess by going straight into the phase spider's den, where the cube was lurking. Turns out the cube got the better of him. Despite the fact that he managed to corner these phase spiders into the cube, the phase spiders naturally have the ability to teleport into the ethereal plane, and thus escape the ooze through unconventional means.
Right.
Sudriel, however, has no such ability.
So I was literally bitten by spiders and then succumb to an ooze.
You know why you succumbed to the ooze?
Because a holy avenger over here could not get to me fast enough. We're talking about Daniel's character. Dan's character. But
Yeah, 'cause I got knocked out right away.
and it was all for a horse. And then a princess. But yes, my character has died from an ooze in itself. A gelatinous cube.
In a most glorious fashion, I must say.
Yep. So, alright. What else do we have to say about gelatinous cubes?
Average, they stick to about 10 by 10 by 10 feet. But
This
as I
typical length of a dungeon hallway.
said, yeah. So, but as I said, they do grow to fit their surroundings based
Yes.
off of organic material. They are heavy, like many other oozes. They weigh 7.5 tons.
1,500 pounds. 15,000 pounds, I'm sorry.
Now, the way that I do the oozes, at least in my campaign, and you guys could do this with yours, is to give slight hints that there may be an ooze. So the hallways are super clear. There's no fungus. There's no, like, it starts off as fungus, and then all of a sudden you turn this corner, and you've got two ways. Well, this path has nothing in it. There's no fungus. There's no rats. No nothing.
Moss, no rust, nothing.
Yeah, there's just nothing, and
It's all just
it almost has a glisten to it, like it's that clean. And then the other hints that I have, depending on whether the characters are looking or not, are perception. Okay, you have that lit torch. Okay, do you see the reflection off of the transparent material from your torch, or do you have, something like that kind of idea that you might be able to see it before you just walk into it.
It also depends on how much is cluttered up within the ooze itself. Depends on how much it's fed.
Yeah, and that was the other thing is okay, is there a bunch of just inorganic material floating in the middle of the hallway?
Chances are, if you're encountering a floating pouch of metal coins, you don't want to go there. You don't want to go with that direction.
Which I thought would be a nice little trickster reversal, is have everything strung up by, like, say, fishing wire in the middle of a hallway as a deterrent. So people would think there's an ooze, but instead you've got, a random sword that just sits there in the middle of the hallway with some, like, armor misplaced. It's all hung up by fishing wire or a string of some sort. So,
Perfect trap for a cunning thief.
yeah, it's the rovers. So like, oh, that looks like a putty. Might work for metagame players too.
That's a thing. I just imagine the irony of a thief setting up a trap like that, only to then run into the ooze a hallway down.
That would be hilarious. As we described earlier, the oozes, they split off in hallways, or when they ever come into a pass or a intersection, they kind of split off in different directions. And that's kind of the only way that they reproduce. And then obviously, as I said, that they risk being absorbed by the parent, maybe down a different hallway that connects back to the main.
So, I still think of the process, like, what if both of them became the full size and then met up again?
One of them is going to consume the other.
Yep.
So would it then become a 20 by 10 by 10?
If the hall was that big, yes. They fit.
What if it's not that big?
Oh, you mean like lengthwise?
Yes.
Oh. I mean, it would for a while. It's really how you want to do it. I mean, legends say that there are gigantic oozes.
I'd imagine they can just continue to keep getting bigger if they have enough space.
Let's
Hundreds
just
of...
say that the caboose gets the short end of the stick.
I mean, that's how the god was, created. He's huge. He's a mountain full of ooze, too. So it's like...
Mm-hmm.
But, like, did he do a process of splitting, growing, then reforming?
Oh, I'm sure he did, as far as,
it's basically
creating the oozes.
That is basically what I was trying to say. Like, if an ooze were to do the same, like, if it would split off, let that one grow, come back, and now it's bigger.
No, because it wants to consume.
So, the gelatinous cube, as I said, kind of has legends about it. There are some that are hundreds of thousands of cubic feet, as we kind of mentioned earlier with the Jublex, that they can have some sentience.
The big beauty.
Then another question I come with is like, if a gelatinous cube were to continuously grow, would it just be a giant cube, or would it eventually just become a mound?
That would be hilarious to see just like this giant 1,000-foot by 1,000-foot by 1,000-foot cube sliding its way through a town.
Are you seeing like Surface World's gelatinous cube?
Surface World?
So not Underdark or in a tunnel or anything like that.
Sure, yeah.
Then I would say all sides would grow equally. So yes, it would
Be a giant
it would stay
cube
cubed.
just sliding across the hills.
That you can barely see.
that you can barely see.
It consumes a city.
Yeah, but is easy to defeat. It's only eats organic materials, so don't attack it with your quarterstaff. Attack it with your blades, your arrows, etc.
Would you upgrade the HP and the XP on that? I mean,
For the size?
the
Yeah.
size.
Oh,
They
yeah,
can
hold
I
more
mean,
people.
Or the AC as well.
The idea of the
AC
perfectly
would
clean
probably go
boost.
down because the bigger it is, the easier it is to hit.
That's true.
Or if
That would also
anything,
mean speed.
if anything, its AC would be the same. I would just say you would raise its health up a lot.
Yeah,
Would
that's
basically be what would change.
Would you change the speed as well? Seeing as
No,
it's
probably
big?
not. Well,
Still
maybe
20 feet.
because it still has to move all that weight
Sure.
really slowly.
But it's
'cause it
not
would
like a
weigh lot
Tarrasque
more.
where it can make a large gate.
No, it's just sliding.
It's just
Yeah.
sliding. You
Which-
think that much like surface area going across it would just slow it down.
Does the whole tree remain or just the trunk?
Oh,
I'd
the
say
whole
the
tree
roots.
moves with it. It probably like drags the roots along. So my thought was going back to the city idea. There's rumors in your world of this floating city, and everyone's like, "Where did this come from?" And every adventurer that goes there just never returns. And they're like, "We don't know why." Oh, by the way, it's also protected by an army of skeletons. There's a reason.
But
They're
they're
all
facing the
just
wrong
floating
way.
in the cube.
They're facing the wrong way. They're facing toward the city.
That's hilarious. Well, let's move on to the gray ooze.
All right, so gray ooze.
Well, why is it called the gray ooze?
Well, probably because it looks like gray sludge. It can
Cement.
appear, basically, that would be the way I would describe it. It can look like whetstone, or like a liquid rock, or just an amorphous rock formation. Which, in a lot of ways, is kind of just how they appear. They literally just look like gray, sort of liquid, solid, like hybrid states almost.
So don't trust that puddle in the center of the room.
Exactly. Another example I
Or that was
know...
coming from the wall.
In the Rage of the Abyss campaign, there's a section where there's actually a bunch of gray oozes that look like just detailless statues, like formless statues. And they wait like that until prey enters the room. That sort of triggers them into attacking. Gray oozes, kind of like the other ones, consume organic matter. They are a lot thinner, actually. They're only 8 inches thick. However, they are 14 feet across. They become a lot thinner at the expense of sort of widening around their surroundings.
They're like a long
averagely,
snake.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I think the idea for that is because they can squeeze through such tiny cracks and whatnot to get into other rooms or under the doors. So I think that kind of aids into it being thick or more malleable.
Yeah, it helps out a lot. And then one of the other things that's pretty cool about them as far as their reproductive trait is after they consume a rather large meal, small droplets of them will break off of their bodies as they move away. And eventually those droplets will form into other gray oozes.
Oh, great. More splitting.
So, yeah, but it's kind of different. It's like, I'm going to drop off this little piece of me here, and then that piece will just kind of eventually grow and start
Don't mind me. I'm just pooping out a new consciousness.
Speaking of consciousness, gray oozes are kind of the go-to for psionic ooze. At least in the monster manual, they do have a variant ability, so where they have limited psionic abilities. It's not going to be as grand as, say, a white maw, but it is it still exists. It would have some consciousness.
So it can actually speak.
Yes. Well, okay. Not. I don't know about speaking. It's more of like a resistance to magic kind of idea.
Okay.
So it gives it some immunity to magic, and then in other editions, I've learned that they've had resistance to fire and cold damage as well.
The Grey Oozes specifically, they are resistant to cold and fire, so they're resistant to elements, essentially. And they are obviously also resistant to acid.
That goes without saying, though.
As far as the psionic ability, what's interesting about them is they can actually mentally affect creatures nearby. The ability in 5e is Psychic Crush, and it quite literally is actually just attacking your mind.
Interesting.
Which fits with sort of the Grey Ooze's style of attack. They, unlike other oozes, don't try to like digest live foes. They will actually attempt to kill or knock unconscious the creatures that they're fighting, and then begin to digest them.
That would suck if you get knocked out and then wake up being eaten by an ooze.
Just a bit.
If you wake up.
If you wake up.
Now, unlike the black pudding, the Grey Ooze, they eat stone, don't they? Like, they can deteriorate through stone.
They can. I don't know about stone. They at least can corrode metal extremely quickly.
Okay.
As opposed to other oozes. I believe they cannot digest stone.
I don't think any of them can really. I mean, they probably could, but it would be at a very slow rate compared to, say, metal. And like all oozes, they do prefer organic material. Organic materials is what's going to give them the nutrients to grow. What's also cool about them, and mentioned back to the don't touch the puddle leaking through the walls or in the center of the room, is that as long as they're not moving, it's almost impossible to determine if it's a wet rock or a statue, as you said.
See, Dan put it as the fact of having them used as statues. I'm just kind of imagining them disguising themselves as a gargoyle.
Yeah.
And like killing him, and people think it's a gargoyle all this time, and nope, it's just a Grey Ooze.
Yeah. The only way you would know it is if someone got away from one. Like, if it deteriorated back into an ooze. Yeah.
Attacked and they got away.
Yeah.
Another terrifying prospect I thought of once is if anyone is familiar with the Terracotta Army.
Yeah.
Just literally just a bunch of statues of an army. If you replaced all of those in an Underdark, like, I don't know, pyramid or like worshipping place to probably Jewelbucks or something.
Yeah.
And there's just all these gray, formless statues that you walk by, and when you're in the midst of them, they all start attacking.
Like Jubelex left them as like
the guardians
you'll
of this
wait
temple.
for my arrival or whatever. Like once
Await my return.
Yeah.
To consume the world.
Would they all converge into one giant Grey Ooze, or would they all individually?
They'll become one giant terracotta knight.
No, I think just multiple. That'd be like extreme.
I would say either one is scary.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That's not something you want to hear in the middle of a giant statue army like that. Roll initiative.
I am not looking forward to your campaign when
Oh
we
yeah,
get to that point.
don't go to the Underdark and you'll be safe.
Oh god.
For now.
And also, when you ever come across the place on the map that's called the Grey Lake, proceed with caution.
Good advice.
I'm not going to get in the bath.
We're going straight to the Grey Lake, by the way.
Right.
Rock the boat.
Don't eat bananas half hour before. Oh wait, that's different. So kind of going off of the Grey Ooze is the White Maw, which is essentially a massively intelligent Grey Ooze from the Doomvault dungeon. It was an early achievement by Sarkala, the transmuter Sarkala, who was trying to create sentient oozes, obviously without Jubelex's help. And so the White Maw was the first quote-unquote success. As I said, a Grey Ooze, so kind of leading off of that, it is highly intelligent, and it can communicate. So unlike the other Grey Oozes, how we were mentioning with some psionic ability, they literally just attack their enemies. Well, this is full-on sentience.
So what would it be saying the entire time? Get in my belly.
Consume, consume, consume. These White Maws are typically gigantic in size. An odd thing with them is that they they have a link to the Ooze Master, which we'll get into in just a moment.
The White Maw is also, by all accounts, completely crazy. Like Daniel said earlier, it was one of the first achievements at creating a sentient ooze. That being said, it has a slight issue where it gained all the identities of the creatures sacrificed to give it sentience.
Ugh.
So it basically just has a bunch of different ideas, and it communicates telepathically. So, you know,
Worst case scenario of split personalities.
it's 1 minute gonna be asking you, do you have food for me, to, oh no, I'm late for my meal, I gotta go.
Yeah.
So it could be the greatest dungeon master ever,
Exactly.
with all the personalities.
And as far as its decisions to devour or eat things, it reactively will just attack whatever creature is nearest to it.
The only
regardless.
creature it won't attack is the Ooze Master.
The Ooze Master.
Now, the Ooze Master was another creation by Sarkala, and it was the greater success, quote unquote, of the Doom Vault Dungeon. Monstrous, intelligent ooze. It's kind of described as a skeleton covered in just red ooze, like a red dripping ooze. It almost looks like a pillar almost. And it's the reason the ooze is red and all that is because they used a red wizard, and that's how it got it. Or it took, instead of taking many different psyches and putting them into one ooze and making it intelligent that way, it took an already intelligent creature and created it and transmuted it into this ooze, or fused it with an ooze rather. But unfortunately, even though it was very powerful, Sarkala wanted it to be a perfect assassin, and this is not. It essentially rebelled and became its own entity. Technically, though, this is not a ooze as far as mechanic standards. These are undead, which is a nice little side bit for clerics and paladins.
But does it have like all the same similar kind of strengths and weaknesses in the news?
Yes and no. It still has it doesn't need to eat as far as the undead, but it still has the physical capabilities of oozes as far as the acidic touch. And
So if it wanted to, it could consume something.
yes, yeah, it definitely could consume something in the same way that other oozes do. Is it just
Right.
consumes it.
So could it split?
So the way and the reason is because I don't want to say no because for each dungeon master is different,
That's
but
fair.
the way that ooze masters are created are by fusing, but was initially by fusing the red wizard with an ooze, and the ooze master itself believes that all the red wizards need to be fused with ooze, and so that we can achieve immortality and be welcomed in their presence. And so on and so forth.
You would eventually think those who want to become red wizards would think otherwise if that was the case, of something hunting down red wizards.
Right? You would think so, but not so much. And because of this, it kind of seeks the same goals as the red wizard, which is lichdom. And after it was destroyed, it reappears in its sleep, and so on and so forth. So,
Wait, so does that mean that a red ooze could become a lich? Or
It's
sorry,
undead.
red ooze, the ooze
it
master.
already the idea is that it already is a lich.
It functions in a similar way to a lich. So you mentioned a red pillar earlier is where the Ooze Master resides inside of, and he comes out from inside that red pillar. If the Ooze Master is ever slain, its body reforms inside that pillar,
Oh, dang.
much like a lich will be recreated.
So
from its
basically, it's a
phylactery.
lich without being a lich.
Correct.
It's a lich where you know where its phylactery is.
Yeah.
And it's super creepy. And
Yeah, and gooey and
I like this idea.
just like cherry.
Of this, I like the idea of having something that is essentially one thing, but not.
Yeah, and the other thing is that a person killed by the secretions of the red pillar, the ooze master also gains the intelligence of the slain creature, which is kind of another interesting idea of. So lich is, most wizards go after lichdom for I haven't learned everything yet, or I want extra intelligence or more power. Well, this one, just die by the Ooze Master, and I have your memories and your intelligence now. So it's kind of an interesting thing. And again, it is linked to the White Maw. So if either one, the White Maw was slain or the Red Ooze, the other one would definitely know.
See, now
and try to hunt the Slayer.
Now I'm thinking of like the Red Wizards literally forming, teaming together to attempt to become an occult of Ooze Masters. If they're going for Lichdom, that's probably that's like an option for them to at least go toward.
Yeah, but do you maintain your own intelligence, or is someone taking yours?
Well, I'm saying, like, if we were to take one person and force them to become the Newsmaster, then have everyone else become under his control to where they all have similar powers.
Be interesting. In a collective, you guys would be immortal.
Exactly.
Next up, we got the Ochre Jelly. This is a yellowish, orange-colored acidic ooze that can dissolve any organic material again. This one, we got some other changes. It has a diameter of 15 feet and 6 inches thick. However, this one, unlike most of the other oozes, can literally compress to fit just the size of a 1-inch crack. So this was the sort of the very like stealthy, predatory kind of ooze that can sneak up on adventurers. It can fit into small places and can like squeeze through walls and like underneath doors and stuff. So they can be used very well for ambushes. They are, by comparison to other oozes, very light. They only weigh 5,600 pounds. And they...
Someone's had a diet.
Yeah, exactly. It's been having a bit of a leaner time. It moves around a lot more. It's got to go adventuring for people, and it's got to hide and set up ambushes.
It's nice and limber enough.
Yeah, it's, it works out.
It looks fairly slow compared to the
Well,
others,
it's slow, but it is more active. It will constantly lurk the floors, the walls, and the ceilings, searching for, using the heat tracking. They kind of have more of an animalistic kind of nature, in which, say, a wolf hunts its creature, it'll try and take off the weakling or the loner. So Ochre Jelly will do just that. They will wait until the group splits, or until they're all sleeping, or it'll look for the prime opportunity to attack.
Essentially, they're more tactical about how they obtain their
A little
prey.
bit, yeah. They have a little more intelligence or a hunting.
That intelligence score of 2 over 1.
Yeah.
So, I'm trying to think now, like, how freaking ridiculous these things can be. Can they corrode through stone? These ones specifically?
Not necessarily.
No,
Kinda
they dissolve flesh really quickly, but they do not dissolve bone, wood, or metal.
yeah. So
Well, I was just thinking, like, it would be interesting to he could do it in other means by hiding in a dungeon that's full of stone walls, and he like bored tunnels all throughout the walls, waiting for something to come through and then attack through those holes.
creature comparison, or not creature comparison, companion. It's a mini purple one.
Mini.
You know, the mini purple worm just creates all these tunnels, and then you got an Ochre Jelly using these tunnels.
Just a baby purple worm that's just living my life, just trying to grow. And then this Ochre Jelly is like, I like this guy. I'm gonna keep him around. I'm just gonna move along.
So I have a homebrew idea for an Ochre Jelly. I've used it at a distance because some of my players were flying over a desert. Now this is most oozes are Underdark, but this one specifically it took on like sand form. It was like quicksand, so it moved through the dunes, and you would see it from a distance, and it could consume people as they were walking through the desert.
So you'd see it aerially, but not as if you're traveling through the deserts because of the heat.
Possibly, if you were up on a dune and you were looking out, I mean, it could deceive you, or you could literally see it consume someone else.
Due to its color, I could very easily blend in with dunes.
Right.
I kind of like the idea that the scare tactics, something's hunting me, I know it's hunting me, let's hide in this room, and all of a sudden there's just this yellow viscous fluid just coming underneath the door, or through the cracks of the door, and you're like, what the heck is that?
It's the thing.
Just imagine, instead of an army of zombies coming after you, it's an army of ochre jelly. Good luck keeping those out.
No, you just outrun them.
Yeah, they're less.
Not if you're surrounded.
That's true. Fly?
I think the last one we have is the slithering tracker, and that's also on the Volos.
It's sort of. It's not, by technical standards, an ooze. It is a created ooze. More like a pact. Someone who hungers for revenge, who is after it. They go to a group of hags, a coven of hags, or a really powerful wizard or something, whatever you want to call. But it is, like you said, it is a ritual.
And basically what happens, like you said, they hunger for revenge, and the ritual sucks all the moisture out of their body, out of the person that's desiring this vengeance, and that moisture coalesces into this semi-liquid body that is the slithering tracker. The creature's mind, however, lives on with it, so it is sentient. And these things are great because they're basically an ooze version of a revenant.
Yes.
Essentially. They will taste the ground that it goes over just to find where its prey could be. And to kill people, it will rise up and enshroud a creature and will attempt to drown it, if possible, in water, and also draining it of its blood. So they are very vicious. And they can take out people really well. And after a while, after it does succeed in killing, it actually can be slightly easier to find because bits of blood will be splotched into its form. So
kind of leaves like this slided trail, but
yeah,
the body is still there.
So you kind of can figure out where it is. However, unlike with revenants, after they get their revenge, they will the soul will depart to the afterlife.
Mm-hmm.
With slithering trackers, when they get their revenge, that doesn't make it finish. It still exists. So
and often
they
leads
can
to
keep
madness,
going
right?
around. Eventually, some of them are aware of their purpose, and will then kind of go on to get vengeance on other people that it remembers from its life. However, most of the time, they can't cope with being trapped in liquid form, and because their desire for blood will just begin to start attacking indiscriminately until it's destroyed.
Yeah, one thing I kind of wish that would be kind of interesting to have, and I'm sure as a DM I could try to figure out a way to do it, is to have them try to possess a body. Since they are the fluids of their former body, it would be interesting if they were to drain one body and possess it.
Oh, like go inside and move it around like a puppet almost?
Like a weird suit.
Yeah.
That would be
meat
terrifying.
Basically. You move really awkwardly.
Yeah, that is an
And
idea.
eventually the body would decay and would hunt down a new body.
Invasion of the body snatchers. Literally.
I kind of want to do something like that. It sounds like it'd be fun.
The question is, so it would drain the body of its fluids,
Replace
its fluids with itself.
With itself.
Would it still look withered and drained, or would it?
The
body would still just
plump
look
up?
like this very...
It would definitely look a little sunken in.
Like someone dehydrated, like really
Yeah.
dehydrated.
No, it's sweating itself.
Or you just aged very rapidly.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
You just now have very wrinkly skin.
Not to mention, where'd that brand new deadly wound come from?
Right.
It'd be very interesting.
Why are your eyes sunken in?
Why do you have no eyes?
Right.
A little longer episode this time, but I hope we've given you plenty of inspiration for Oozes. Thanks again, Nate, for joining us. And until next time.
Thank you for staying at the Bardic Inn. If you would like to hear more, we will be uploading new content Thursdays at noon PST on
iTunes, YouTube, SoundCloud, Castbox, and Podbean.
If you have any recommendations on future content, you can leave a comment on these various platforms, or you can contact us on Twitter at the Bardic Inn, or on Facebook at facebook.com/Bardic Inn.
We're your local bards.
Daniel.
Andrew.
Dave,
And Jake.
be inspired.